This is video 7, part 2 of the Introducing Herbal Medicine course. This video is entitled Herb-Drug Interactions in General. So what evidence do we have that herbal medicine is safe medicine? First, we've got traditional use going back to documentation over centuries. And then we've got low toxicity in animal studies. The major sales of over-the-counter herbal preparations have been going on for over 100 years. And safe practitioner use, in other words, no claims on insurance for medical herbalists, for example. Side effects reported in clinical trials are mild and comparable to those taking placebo. Drug monitoring reports indicate very few problems with herbal medicines, and there are very few reports on the whole of adverse events. Herb-drug interactions in general, well, most proven interactions in humans have involved warfarin with St. John's wort. In 2003, only 22 true herb-drug interactions were identified with substantial evidence from the world's medical literature, i.e. one person, not just an animal study, more than one person. It could just, or an animal study. The rate of report is about 4 cases, true cases per year. Herb-drug interactions, to continue, the lists of interactions that you may come across are full of speculative statements which refer to test tube studies or animal studies often done at a high dose. So doses are often used much higher than would be used in the clinical experience or in over-the-counter products. Therefore, the likelihood of herb-drug interactions is minimal when used at the normal dose for humans because the doses are too low in comparison. Few true adverse effects are reported despite the millions of users. For example, in the States, 21 million Americans are said to be regular herb users. These reviewers of the paper that I'm quoting here concluded that surveys of the use of herbs do not equate with interactions, despite authors' conclusions often pointing in that way. For example, in the UK, there was a survey of herb use amongst cancer patients, and then unfounded conclusions were drawn about this, indicating that there was some interaction where it was just a survey. So this wrong conclusion misleads journalists into then publishing misinformation. So it's interesting, this quote from the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health in the National Institutes of Health in the USA, which was in 2021. And I think it's worth reading this. Concerns about herb-drug interactions are often not based on rigorous research. Most herb-drug interactions identified in current sources are hypothetical, inferred from animal studies, cellular assays, or based on other indirect means. However, attention to this issue is needed for drugs with a narrow therapeutic index, such as cancer chemotherapeutic agents, warfarin and digoxin. So to summarize, herb-drug interactions are not chemical interactions to produce a toxin, as most people might think. The main concerns are the lowering of drug levels in the blood by an increase in liver detoxification enzymes, and see my last video on this with St. John's wort. Proven cases are relatively few and mostly involve warfarin and St. John's wort. Differentiating the proven from the speculative, the latter is based on extrapolated data from test tube and animal studies. Positive herb drug effects can also happen, not always negative. For example, a reduction in drug side effects, for example, in cancer therapy, where a herb might enable the cancer treatment to continue. And synergy, enhanced action, for example, in high blood pressure. So I hope that gives you a little overview of where the main concerns are with herb drug interactions. So thank you for listening. Thank you.